Hello and welcome to World Connect, a show where we get you the latest from around the world. This week, Britain was given a special status in the European Union. The unexpected death of Justice Antonin Scalia brought in a massive political storm in the United States, and Pope Francis' historic Mexico visit gave a ray of hope to hundreds of inmates. We'll get you all this and much more in today's edition, but first let's take a look at the focus of the show. Britain and European Union seal a deal giving the country a special status. As Prime Minister Cameron gets ready to take it to the British public, a referendum in June will now decide the final deal. Turkey continues bombing Kurdish targets as Ankara terror strike kills 28. Angry over Washington's support to Kurdish groups, President Erdogan asks US to choose between Turkey and the Kurds. Death of a Supreme Court judge draws fresh battle lines between Republicans and the Obama administration. Obama vows to appoint new judge to strike a balance in the top court, which was dominated by conservatives earlier. And how a 9-year-old boy lives a dream day to become the savior of Sydney. British Prime Minister Cameron and the European Union have finally been able to clinch a deal that provides a special status to the country. Now, as the debate over Britain's exit from the Union gains momentum, what will be interesting to see now is how a closely divided British public would decide the fate of not only the country but also Cameron's political career in the upcoming referendum in June.
To be or not to be? As the tussle over whether Britain will exit the European Union or not continued well into the Brussels summit, Prime Minister David Cameron won unanimous support from the European Union over the reforms that he had sought from the bloc. In the 2 days of intense negotiations with European Council President Donald Tusk, Downing Street argued to limit concessions on offer to help keep Britain in the bloc. Fellow leaders and diplomats said that an agreement which would allow him a referendum in June seems feasible. While announcing the deal, Tusk said that it is a legally binding and irreversible decision by all 28 leaders without compromising EU's fundamental values.
We have just achieved a deal which strengthens Britain's special status in the European Union.
Cameron, who has been struggling to sell a deal to an increasingly sceptical British public and many from within his party, wanted change in the following areas: measures to curb migration, safeguards to protect London's financial sector, Britain to be excluded from ever closer union. Now the UK has negotiated a deal to be given a special status in the EU, which in turn would mean that it could not opt out of an ever closer union. The country would never join the euro currency, and tough new restrictions on foreigners using its welfare state would be put in place.
I believe we are stronger, safer and better off inside a reformed European Union.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel had earlier said that her country was ready to do everything to create the conditions for Britain to remain a part of the Union. Now that EU has agreed to a special status for United Kingdom, it can turn to more pressing concerns such as the migrant crisis. However, ahead of the June referendum, the implications of this deal will not only define Cameron's legacy but also redraw the contours of European politics.
Hours after 28 people were killed in a terror attack in Ankara, Turkish warplanes have been bombing Kurdish targets in Syria and Iraq. Now, Turkey's Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has asserted that the shelling would continue and that the country would respond in kind to whoever breaches its border.
Turkish warplanes bombed Kurdish targets in Syria and Iraq hours after a terror attack killed at least 28 people in the heart of the Turkish capital Ankara on Wednesday. A car laden with explosives exploded next to military buses near Turkey's armed forces headquarters, parliament and government buildings. Wednesday's attack is the latest, taking the number of killings to 200 people in just 7 months. Turkey, who blamed the Kurdish fighter groups for the attack, vowed to continue retaliation.
Our armed forces have been carrying out shellings to retaliate mortar shells coming from the Syrian side of the border and to protect the refugees sheltering in Azaz. This will continue. We will respond in kind to whosoever breaches our border.
In another attack, a military vehicle was subjected to a bomb attack in southeast Turkey on Thursday. Meanwhile, the Syrian Kurdish PYD party leader Saleh Muslim denied Turkish accusations that his group was involved in the Ankara attack. He accused Turkey of trying to escalate fighting in northern Syria. PYD's military wing, YPG, has Washington support with it. The US sees PYD as a useful ally in the fight against Islamic State. US backing to Kurdish groups has strained its ties with Turkey. President Erdogan rebuked the United States over its support for Kurdish groups and said Washington should decide whether it wants to back Turkey or the Kurdish insurgents.
The founder of YPG is obvious. I have said this before. Aren't we working together with the United States and NATO? Is your ally Turkey or PYD and YPG? We want to know that.
The Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, which Turkey, the US and the EU have labelled as a terrorist group, has fought an off and on war with Turkey for more than 3 decades. US appeals for Turkey to stop bombing Kurdish targets has further irritated Ankara, already infuriated by the rapid advance of Kurdish fighters, who are taking advantage of Russian airstrikes in the region to seize territory near the Turkish border. This week's incidents are seen by many as a spillover of the ongoing crisis in Syria, with Turkey even indicating it would send troops inside the neighboring territory.
With that, we wrap up the news from Europe. But before we move ahead, here are some visuals of a giant new organ in Paris concert hall with its 6,000 pipes inbuilt into its walls. Well, this week saw Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, demand an investigation into the airstrikes that killed scores of people in northern Syria. Now, China asked Australia and New Zealand to refrain from getting involved in the South China Sea controversy. Watch all this and more in updates from Asia.
The Médecins Sans Frontières medical charity has demanded an independent investigation into airstrikes that killed 25 people at an MSF-backed hospital in northern Syria early this week. MSF, also known as Doctors Without Borders, said the attack was probably carried out by Syrian and Russian forces as part of an offensive. Russia has denied the allegations. United Nations and residents said in all at least 50 civilians were killed when missiles hit 5 medical centers and 2 schools in rebel-held towns on Monday. The United Nations and the US have condemned the attacks on civilian facilities. UN aid reached besieged town of Muadamiyah and other areas in Syria as the war-ravaged cities grapple with starvation and lack of basics. Intra-agency convoys also reached people stranded in Zabadani, Madaya and Al-Fua and Kafrea, carrying medical supplies, vaccines, water and sanitation items in addition to food. China has asked Australia and New Zealand to stay away from the South China Sea controversy and not make unrequired suggestions. Chinese Foreign Ministry said non-involved parties should regard the South China Sea issue objectively and not to close their eyes to historical facts and make unconstructive suggestions. Australia and New Zealand had advised China to keep restrained on the South China Sea dispute. Tensions between China and its neighbors rose early this week after Taiwan and US claimed that China deployed an advanced surface-to-air missile system to one of the disputed islands it controls in the South China Sea. China reacted to the reports, saying they were creation of Western media. Reviving the ancient Silk Road, the first train to connect China and Iran arrived in Tehran on Monday carrying Chinese goods. The train carrying commercial products from eastern Zhejiang province took 14 days to make the 9,500-kilometer journey through Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. Filipino boxer and politician Manny Pacquiao has renewed his criticism of homosexuality after earlier apologizing for saying that gay people were worse than animals. Leading sportswear maker Nike had cancelled its contract with Pacquiao for the remarks. In fresh comments, he said he didn't say anything wrong and was speaking the truth only. His remarks were condemned across the world.
The new cabinet of the Australian government was sworn in on Thursday following a major reshuffle announced by Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull last week. Now, the team incorporated new, younger ministers. The cabinet reshuffle comes ahead of the federal election later this year and gains significance as it comes amidst growing criticism about the ruling Liberal Party. Now, Turnbull has said that his revamped front bench was a transition from older leadership to newer leadership. The unexpected death of Justice Antonin Scalia has brought in a political storm in the United States. Now, while the Republicans who are hoping to win the presidential polls want to wait till November, the Democrats led by President Barack Obama have already sent out a strong message. Now, this vacancy has become a nail-biting tussle, and here's why.
The Constitution is pretty clear about what is supposed to happen now. When there is a vacancy on the Supreme Court, the President of the United States is to nominate someone. I am going to present somebody who indisputably is qualified for the seat.
President Barack Obama's clear message to opponents that nothing deters him from nominating the replacement of Justice Antonin Scalia, the Supreme Court judge who died last Saturday. Scalia was found dead at a luxury resort in West Texas, triggering conspiracy theories about his death and a fresh political showdown between the Democrats and Republicans. With initial confusions over the cause of death, a court ruled that Justice Scalia died of natural causes. However, questions are being raised over the handling of his death. As the country mourned the demise of the veteran jurist, considered as a conservative icon, flags were at half-staff mark at the Supreme Court and several federal buildings. Scalia was appointed to Supreme Court in 1986 by President Ronald Reagan. The unexpected death of Scalia has brought in a massive political storm. Republicans have threatened to block any move by President Obama to appoint a new judge. Any nomination to the post must be confirmed by the Senate, where Republicans are in dominance. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already said that the vacancy should not be filled until Obama's successor takes office in January, so that voters also have a say. As the rivals further toughened their stand, Obama asked them to rise above partisan politics.
It's the one court where we would expect elected officials to rise above day-to-day politics. And this will be the opportunity for senators to do their job.
But why the vacancy has become such a big deal? The question deals with balancing in the top court of the country, which enjoys superiority to all other courts, governments and states. The court of 9 judges till now had 5 conservatives and 4 liberals. In Scalia's absence, the court has equal numbers to both the sides. The vacancy is also being seen as an opportunity to balance the equation in favor of the liberals. Republicans, hoping that they will triumph the presidential polls in November, are demanding the post be kept vacant and a judge must be nominated by the new president. The Supreme Court, with 8 justices now, could just end up splitting 4-4 on contentious cases. This will mean the Supreme Court will not be able to give any effective ruling, and court's opinions will hold no legal weight. The names doing the rounds for Obama's next pick are Sri Srinivasan, an Indian American on the District of Columbia Circuit, Jane Kelly of 8th Circuit, Paul Watford of 9th Circuit, and California Attorney General Kamala Harris.
A Brazilian mother has given birth to twins, one with microcephaly and one without, adding further questions to ongoing studies in the suspected link between the Zika outbreak and a surge in the cases of the brain defect in newborns. Now, the woman named Cassiana Severina now joins many other Brazilian mothers of children born with microcephaly. Brazil's northeastern state of Pernambuco is one of the areas hardest hit by the Zika outbreak, with 1,501 microcephaly cases related to Zika infection as of last week. Meanwhile, researchers of biotechnology company in the German city of Duisburg have claimed to have developed a timely test to diagnose the Zika virus. After calling Pope Francis' remarks about him disgraceful, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has heaped praise on the pontiff. Now, the Pope had said that Trump's proposal to build a wall on the U.S. border with Mexico was not Christian, provoking a strong response from the businessman. But hours later, at a town hall event in South Carolina, the billionaire hotel developer was more conciliatory. Pope Francis undertook a 6-day trip to Mexico. Now, the historic trip took him to the country's indigenous south to violence-plagued north. Highlights of his visit included one to the prison of border city of Ciudad Juarez, where he had given words of hope to hundreds of inmates. Now, the Pope during his visit stressed on the need for new opportunities for the young people so that they would not fall into the circle of drug trafficking and violence. Visiting marginalized areas of the country, the Pope also took a swipe at the rich and the corrupt. Cuban President Raul Castro awarded Cuba's highest honor, the Jose Marti Medal, to Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill. On receiving the medal, the Patriarch said that this is an honor for all Russians. The Russian Patriarch Kirill also met former President and Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. He later flew to the Antarctica, where he said Mass at a scientific research station. Uganda's main opposition candidate Kizza Besigye was arrested on Friday as early results from the presidential election showed Yoweri Museveni set to extend his 30-year grip on power. Now, the police in capital Kampala set off stun grenades and fired tear gas volleys outside the headquarters of Besigye's Forum for Democratic Change party as tensions rose after a largely peaceful ballot held a day earlier. Now, results showed Museveni with a sizable lead to retain the presidency. Besigye, who challenged the 71-year-old Museveni unsuccessfully in 3 previous elections, has repeatedly insisted that the election would not be free and fair, and on Thursday accused the government of manipulating the vote. As the world prepares to move towards renewable sources of energy, Morocco is leading as an example. Now, blessed with a significant hour of sunshine annually, Noor Complex in Morocco, the world's largest concentrated solar power plant, is preparing to light up over 1 million homes using solar energy in just a couple of years.
Popular as the location in Hollywood blockbusters Lawrence of Arabia and Gladiator, the site near the city of Ouarzazate in Morocco will now be known as the world's largest concentrated solar power plant. The first phase of the 3-part solar power plant project was kicked off in early February. Morocco receives over 3,000 hours of sunlight annually, making it the perfect site for a solar power generating plant. The plant, named the Noor Complex, uses concentrated solar power which enables the storage of energy for nights and cloudy days. Once fully operational, the plant is expected to produce energy to power over 1 million homes by 2018. It will also reduce carbon emissions by an estimated 760,000 tons per year. 5 lakh crescent-shaped mirrors are being used in this plant, which will concentrate the sunlight onto a pipeline filled with fluid, heating it up to 393 degrees Celsius. The fluid is then used to heat up a nearby source of water, which turns to steam and then spins turbines to create energy. The plant will also use the sun's warmth to melt salt, which will hold its heat and stays hot enough at night to provide up to 3 hours of power. As Morocco is largely dependent on imported fossil fuels to meet its energy needs, the country is keen to diversify and start using renewable energy. The solar plant is widely appreciated as a bold step towards greener development. The move also gains significance as Morocco prepares to host the next United Nations Climate Change Conference in November 2016.
And before heading forward, here are some more stories that are making headlines the world over. At a time when iPods and smartphones have overtaken traditional platforms of music, the deserts of Algeria are dancing to the tunes of Imzad, an old-school single-string violin that is struggling to survive in the modern world. With only 2 women playing it a decade ago to save the Imzad Association bringing about change, one tune at a time, this musical journey has only begun.
The Imzad music of Algeria's Tuareg women echoes in the desert, bringing images of the past, reverberating sounds of tradition and culture. The distinctiveness of the tune put it in the UNESCO Cultural Heritage list. And adding to the uniqueness of this desert tune is the fact that only women played this instrument. It is believed that men risk a curse if they do so. With the young women of Algeria attracted to modern music, the age-old tradition was pushed to the brink of extinction. Only 2 women played the instrument in the early 2000s. Save the Imzad Association, set up in 2003, promoted the single-string violin's peculiar music and ensured it survived.
For us as Tuaregs, the Imzad is the best instrument. It is an expression of history, violence, peace. It expresses our culture.
The musical strains of this instrument are often traditionally accompanied by poetic songs on past heroes and their accomplishments. It was also played during courtship meetings, which usually lasted long into the night. Many women have been mesmerized by the Imzad fiddle and have eagerly taken it up as their mission to revive the practice.
When I was younger, I lived in the desert. We took the time to learn to play and enjoy the instrument.
The instrument is handcrafted by the women themselves. Out of half a gourd shell covered in animal skin, a wooden handle and a string of horsehair. Keeping up with the contemporary times, the association also has a recording studio, a dance studio, a stage for performances and a workshop for making imzads.
When I first arrived here, I met a woman called Seth, who used to make imzads before I did. I watched what she was doing very carefully until I started to make them myself.
With a lot more youngsters showing interest in the traditional instrument, the single-string violin is attempting to make a comeback in Algeria.
A clever villain, a damsel in distress and a savior superhero. This story is no less than a fairy tale, and indeed it was just that for 9-year-old Dominic Pace, who lived his dream of becoming a superhero for one day. We get you an overwhelming story of the day Sydney was saved.
It was a superhero that saved the day in Australia. As Iron Boy defeated villain Ultron outside the famed Sydney Opera House, it was a dream come true for 9-year-old Dominic Pace, who suffers from cystic fibrosis, when he lived the life of his favourite superhero through Make-A-Wish Foundation. The New South Wales Police also pitched in and recruited the little boy on a secret mission. Dominic's day started with a helicopter ride to the police headquarters. Police Commissioner Andrew Scipion briefed Dominic and asked him to help free Make-A-Wish reporter Hope Joy and battle Ultron. The little boy then rode a police speedboat to Clark Island to save the reporter from villainous henchmen, along with his 12-year-old brother Joseph as Captain Rhodes. Then comes the best part of the day for little Dominic, as he fought with Ultron and his agents at the steps of the Opera House to stop the villain Ultron and agents. His day got even better when Robert Downey Jr., who plays the Iron Man in the Hollywood blockbuster, addressed him in a video message and inducted him into the Avengers as an honorable member.
Saving the world, isn't it? I hope you had lots of fun. I bet you enjoyed the helicopter ride this morning. I just want to wish you all the best. Keep up the good work. And listen here, I don't do this very often. I'm making you an honorary member of the Avengers.
Present to you the Medal of Valor.
The community also cheered the little superhero, who pulled off the day in between sessions of physical therapies and exercises. At the end of the day, Dominic said if he had a superpower, it would be to heal. Favorite superhero, maiden rescued, villain defeated, home city's savior, message from most liked actor, honorary member of International Superheroes, Dominic had it all. It was indeed a dream day for the seriously ill little boy.
Well, this brings us to the end of this edition of World Connect. Do send in your feedback. You can write to us at worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. But before we wrap up, let's take you to Hong Kong Harbour, where Seoul's Light Rose Garden landed as part of its world tour. Now, the tour aims at spreading love from east to west. Take a look at it. Thanks for watching.